Welcome to the Stray Pointers podcast, where seemingly ordinary people join us for extraordinary discussions. You're listening to Season 1, Episode 14 of the Stray Pointers podcast. This episode of the Stray Pointers podcast was recorded on November 26th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Lullis. For links to items referenced in the podcast, please see the show notes for this episode at straypointers.com. Joining us again today is Hoovie and Rick Lundeen. Rick, welcome back.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Rick and I wanted to talk a little bit about the new Doctor Who episode that aired yesterday on Disney Plus, and was it just on the BBC over in the UK, Rick? You know?
Yeah, BBC in the UK, and then Disney Plus, the rest of the planet.
Okay, so initial take, Rick.
I'm just really happy that we've got Doctor Who back in this form, this version, because it was I overall liked it. I thought it was a great return to form, and it was just a good time. And amazingly enough, I was actually kind of surprised that places I went to check out reviews afterward, or just word of mouth, the internet seems positive, which
that's unusual for anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that won't last. People will turn on it eventually.
Right.
But so, I enjoyed it.
So the plot of this was lifted from an early 80s comic strip from Doctor Who Weekly in the UK called Doctor Who and the Star Beast. And yeah. I checked that out a little bit. I looked, and it's, there's a superficial, the core plot is lifted from it. What I thought was intriguing when I was looking this up, though, is that the two legendary British comic writers, Pat Mills and John Wagner, who were writing their weekly strip at the time, tried to make a pitch to the BBC for this to be an actual episode for the fourth Doctor, and it was turned down.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Well, it always takes a while, but eventually all things get adapted, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a few things that caught my attention. There was a large focus on why this face. Why has the Doctor returned as the 14th Doctor with the 10th Doctor's face, and, as near as I could tell, the same mannerisms? Any opinions there?
Well, you've got the real reasons, because Shudigawa, his schedule wouldn't allow him to actually film that early. So, if Russell wanted to do something, he fell upon the idea, he and Tennant and Tate, said, hey, let's get the band back together, and that worked. And then the behind the scenes actual in story reasons, Russell, he's very good. He knows how to take what might be perceived as a disadvantage, because there are some fans that thought, well, come on, Tennant coming back, come on, what's with this, revisiting this old stuff, blah blah blah. There's always going to be kind of a negative take on that, because Tennant wasn't everybody's favorite Doctor. He was very popular, but so, and this was, this, even by myself, this seemed like a very, very risky step, like bringing someone back like this. But I think that since we know with the third special, Neil Patrick Harris is allegedly the toy maker, formerly the Celestial toy maker from the 1960s. It seems like it's probably part of his scheme, but I'm sure there is going to be a good in-story reason for him having the face again.
Okay, so when you and Neil Welch and I were talking about Doctor Who within the last month, you had mentioned, because we were talking about the story of the Timeless Child,
Hmm.
and you had mentioned that, was it Russell T Davies that said he was probably just going to ignore that and write good stories? Was it him that you were referring to back then, or am I mistaken?
Well, no, he was talking about it, and someone I'm sure asked him the question at some point, if you are you going to address it, ignore it, what have you, and uh, well, he's friends with Chibnall, as is Moffat, and all the showrunners are good friends, and he had said that he was going to he I think he specifically said he's not going to write it out.
Okay.
So that could mean a number of things. It could mean that he'll make a brief mention of it in passing, or he'll just ignore it completely. But I don't think he'll go to any great lengths to, you know, waste time in the new series
Hmm.
trying to explain or disregard anything that came before. But he said it is going to be. I mean, it's Timeless Child is canon. It happened, uh, and he's not going to retcon it, and that's fine.
But that's the reason I bring it up, is it appeared there were some retcons in this show. And maybe you don't take him as such, but I thought the whole
Oh, in Star
Don,
Beast.
yeah,
Hmm.
Donna Noble giving away her lottery money, that just seemed to be a very easy retcon to, something that I thought was, well, that was kind of a neat way to, to send her off with just a lot of money. And now it's, well, I gave it away. And now we're right back to where I can just, Donna can just be the every person that she was before.
Well, well, as an example, well, that was one of the first things I thought of when, leading into this. I'm kind of like, well, she did win the lottery, and I mean, I like the way that basically, and the doctor kept asking, why did you give the money away? And he asked it like 3, 4 times. And she had said that she wanted to be a good person and help people and all that stuff. And then when she gets her memory back, she's like so pissed off. It's kind of like, I'm just trying to be like you. And so in a way it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you wipe this person's memory and she has 15 years, she has no idea what had happened and all that stuff, it's going to affect her, and she might do some very questionable things
Okay.
like giving away her money. So I that it didn't really seem like a retcon to me, but just another bizarre thing that Donna Noble does that comes back and somehow bites her in the ass.
Okay. That's fair.
You know,
So a couple of things that the doctor did using his sonic screwdriver in that
yeah.
episode. They over the years, the sonic screwdriver had gotten to be where it sort of turned into a weapon, and then they started to try to slow that back down to where you could just fiddle with machinery and open doors. And now are we back to Doctor Who being like a Green Lantern with some of the stuff he could do?
Well, I'll tell you, the sonic screwdriver has long, I mean, from back in the days of Pertwee and Baker, a lot of people thought that, oh, it's, too easy for him to do this, do that, the other thing, whatever. It was too convenient of a crutch and all this. And it's just gotten more capable and more powerful over the years. Peter Capaldi, during his time as the Doctor, had the sonic screwdriver transformed into a Ray-Ban sunglass
Oh, that's right.
version, and I always love that because it's very different than anything that had been able to do before. Plus, you had a visual component now,
Hmm.
and I thought that was but a lot of people are, oh, that's just wrong. It shouldn't be in the sunglasses. Like, people draw the strangest lines in the sand when it comes to believability on
Sure.
certain with Doctor Who, and I thought that was great. So here, him, I, the drawing the screens I thought it was kind of fascinating because it was just, he usually all all these years in the past with the sonic screwdriver, he would always like activate it, click it, and look at it like he's looking at information on the sonic.
Mm-hmm.
That happened quite a bit. Well, this, him drawing a little screen, you have a little visual, and suddenly he's got a little 3D screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's really just an outgrowth of that, which I thought was fascinating. And wow, I'm thinking, wow, why haven't they ever done that before? Now, the shields, creating the giant shields, that is that is crazy new. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on one hand, I really like that, that possibility.
It seemed to take some effort for him to do that. It wasn't just a click a button and a force field appears. He had to draw it out and then physically move each pane as he was doing that.
Yeah, and that's nice to have, that type of, limit on it, I suppose. But people have always said the Sonic does too much. Well, okay, well, it just does more now. So and
Okay.
it's, and they made a specific point of it being a purely defensive action with shields.
Okay. Then he intercepted in the parking lot. He intercepted a teleport beam with the two officers from the Rarth.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he had done that way back when with Eccleston, and in the very second episode, I think,
Oh, is that right?
End of the World, I think, what's her face, the face on
Yeah.
the face on the sheet of skin, he kind of like screwed with her teleport and brought her right back.
Okay.
So, well, the Sonic can do 5,766 things. And again, as long as it's interesting and it adds something cool to the mix, as long as it's done well, I'm good with anything. But that was a surprise.
Fair enough. So we were introduced to a character. I believe we were introduced to Shirley Ann Bingham from UNIT,
Yeah.
the scientific advisor number 56 at
Yes.
UNIT. What did you think of that character?
I thought she was fine. The mere fact that she's got so much weaponry in her wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
but that's par for the course. That's very Russell T Davies right
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean,
Well,
um,
the actress Ruth Madley actually has spina bifida.
oh
She's
really?
Yes, so she's been in a couple other things I've seen. She's been in a series that was on HBO called Years and Years that was kind of a politically dystopian deal where family was having to deal with fascist rulers in the UK, I think. And
Oh,
then there's a comedy series called The Cleaner, and she was in an episode of that
no,
from
okay.
the UK. I'm curious because it sounds like with the setup, I doubt that I would assume she's going to reappear in, if nothing else, these special episodes, possibly the new series.
I would guess. I think. I mean, now you've got Kate Stewart, and you've got her, and when you get Unit, you usually get. In fact, I'm kind of surprised we didn't see Kate Stewart in this special since it was Unit. But I think she's been promoted up or something like that.
So there's been some chatter on the internet about, and uh, Davies and Moffat have both weighed in on this, that Unit might spin off into its own miniseries.
Yeah, that's. I mean, when they first years ago, when Russell first made comments regarding what Doctor Who should be and how it should be in this type of setup with going to Disney and this and partners and a Whoniverse and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that one of the first natural assumptions one might make that, I mean, Marvel, that's a whole different entity. You've got
Mm-hmm.
like 100 different franchises, all with the, possibilities for films, TV series, whatever. Doctor Who, you've got Doctor Who, and then maybe a couple, maybe a couple possible spinoffs. Unit would be a natural for that. But I'm starting to wonder if this Hooniverse. When he first said that, I was kind of like, oh, geez, I wonder if that means there'll be like a ton of spinoffs. But now I'm starting to think that with all the announcements we've had this year, with iPlayer over in the UK getting the entirety of the catalog being
Mm-hmm.
shown on there, and the short Tales of the TARDIS mini videos, and all this stuff, I get the feeling that when you're talking about the Hooniverse, I think we've already got about 90% of that Hooniverse in place with all this stuff going on in 60 years. And I'm thinking maybe there'll be one, maybe two spinoffs. And I would think one unit would be a natural for it.
I think they're gonna try to milk this for all they can.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's plenty of possibilities, and I'm well right now. As far as streaming rights goes, Disney's got the streaming rights for these specials and the Shudigawa
Mm-hmm.
series coming up. I have to assume that since content is king in the streaming world, I got to figure then that when some of these rights issues, like the back catalog of the new era from Eccleston to Whitaker, those are with Max right now, and Max is showing all the new. I mean, they've had it for a while, and so they've got right now streaming rights for that. I'm going to assume that when those rights are up, that maybe they will go to Disney, and same with Tubi has the rights for the classic series, as does BritBox. But BritBox, I'm not even sure if that's a U.S. thing as far as well as a U.K. thing, right? Or no, is that just a U.S. thing for British stuff?
Yeah, I think it's a U.S. thing for British shows.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming that whenever all the rights issues end with contracts, that Disney will get everything. I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
I hope, because it'd be great to have it all under one roof. Because I don't see them doing this, Disney really jumping on this, unless they can get 60 years of content on the back end at some point.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So in the end of the story, the Meep refers to someone known as the boss.
Yeah.
Do you have any speculation on who the Meep might be referring to?
Well, I've heard other rumblings, but as far as I'm concerned, I heard that. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, then, obviously the boss is probably the Celestial Toy Maker, I would think.
Fingers crossed for the master.
Yeah, you know what? I tell you, it's funny
Are you
because
mastered out?
um, well, I have heard someone referred to. I heard someone refer to, or maybe it was Tennant, saying that something about the boss reference is actually not going to be revealed until later in the Shooty's first season.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just rumblings. I would think that it's the toy maker, because there was a big debate about they right from the get-go, people were looking at visuals of Neil Patrick Harris, and everybody was like diving at the toy maker, and
Mm-hmm.
he said it's the toy maker, and there's just no doubt in the world that it's the toy maker. But I know some people who still think it's going to be the Valyard from were you familiar with the Valyard?
Probably not.
Okay, that was brought in this dark incarnation of the Doctor between his 12th and final incarnation. It was during the Colin Baker time, and so some people still think it's the Valyard. And I had a theory earlier about it being the Master of the Land of Fiction from the Mine Robber, from an old Patrick Troughton episode.
Mm-hmm.
And his gimmick, that the Master of the Land of Fiction, his gimmick was that in his realm uh, storybooks and fairy tales, comic books came to life. All the characters in the stories came to life. And so I see Star, and that was my running theory for a while there.
Since Star Beast was in our reality a comic book.
Well, yeah. So so it wouldn't surprise me when they had come up with, oh, we're adapting this old Doctor Who weekly comic
Mm-hmm.
into an actual thing. And then last night, Meep says, the boss,
Mm-hmm.
and I found it interesting that the Doctor is usually very well aware, or at least acquainted with knowledge of so many races and planets and
Mm-hmm.
across the universe. And yet he had never heard of the Meep. He had never heard of the Warth warriors. And
Mm-hmm.
they told him that little, tale of the story of the Meep and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And he never, and he was unfamiliar with any of this. And then he says the boss at the end. So it's like, if he's, if Russell is trying to mess with people like me, he's succeeding, because it just, I don't know, it just seemed like a very mind robber ish thing to do. And
Mm-hmm.
another little side thing with the mind robber, there was a scene in there where the master turns Jamie into a jigsaw puzzle, and they've got to, and the Doctor and Zoe, the companion, have to like reassemble his face
Mm-hmm.
on the board. And they have all these options for eyes and mouths. Well, they reassemble it wrong, and a new actor pops out in live action. And behind the scenes, the guy who actually played Jamie, he had the mumps or something like that, so they had to like cover him for a week. But it worked perfectly in story. But that's another thing, this changing of the face, and the Doctor has got this bizarre face that he shouldn't have. You
Mm-hmm.
know, in my head, there's like a couple different little story conspiracy things happening. So I don't know, but that's my guess. I can only guess that it is Neil Patrick Harris's character, whoever he is,
Mm-hmm.
that's doing this. I'm kind of hoping it's not. I hope they give the Master a good long rest, because every Doctor has a Master, it seems, except for Matt Smith. He didn't, but so I don't know. I just get a rest. I don't like the Mad Dog version of the Master, played by
Mm-hmm.
like John Sim or Sasha Dewan. I preferred actually Missy. She was still crazy, but I liked her brand of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of cute. I thought that was nice. Evil, but she was also trying to turn over a new leaf. So I'm fine with no Master for a while. And Russell had even said the Daleks are going to be taking a break too. So
The Doctor mentions Wilf, Wilfred
mm-hmm.
Moth. I'm sorry, Wilfred Mott, Donna's grandfather, who the actor Bernard Cribbins, who had played Wilf, had passed away in 2022. But there's some footage for Doctor Who that they had shot with him,
Yeah, it was his last role.
and there was some. Uh, Basically, the thought is that he's going to appear during some portion of these episodes that we're about to see yet across the next month.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, they did record a couple scenes, so they had everything in the can with him. He's not going to be in it much, but he's going to be in it briefly. He did a few scenes. They filmed that, so yeah, I believe. I would think it'll probably be in that third special. I'm guessing.
There seemed to be a focus on gender association and gender identity in this episode.
Yeah.
Do you think that was well placed?
Um. Well, I mean,
Or do you think it was pandering?
uh, you know, I don't know these days if it's possible to even bring that stuff up without raising eyebrows,
Mm-hmm.
and partially because of what Chibnall did during his run. They some refer to Russell's, as the yeah, he was like using a mallet to like hit us on the head with it. But I don't know. I mean, I think well, Yasmin Finney, who plays Rose,
Hmm.
is trans,
Hmm.
and I don't know. It's like Russell's kind of like sticking up for trans kids, which I think is good,
Sure.
and I don't know. It didn't really bother me that much at all. I mean, I recognized it was going on, um, but I think he did it. Russell did a good job. Like say when you had the boys in the neighborhood, kind of like yelling
Hmm.
at her and all that stuff, and but
Grandma talking about, or Rose's mom talking about, she didn't really know how to address her now because,
yeah,
she called her beautiful now, but she never commented on how handsome she was, prior to, uh, you know,
before the transition.
before the transition. Yes.
Yeah. And well, and that's just it. I thought that they acquitted themselves quite nicely because the boys are like yelling at her, and then Donna gets all upset, and you can relate to the love a mom
Hmm.
has to her child, and just having Donna's temper win the day anyway is usually a good move. But
Hmm.
yeah, the very natural conversation between her and her mom Sylvia, and which it's something that Russell is good at, and it once again, a lot of people these days have they're wary of saying the wrong things and all that, and this just goes to show that they're all in it with us right there.
Hmm.
And there was the one moment where the doctor is talking to Meep, and I think refers to him as a he, and Rose brings up gender identity, which
Hmm.
that might have been a little bit farther than usual, but whatever.
For me, the stretch was Donna running, saying binary, 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 then Rose saying non-binary. I thought that was a little unusual.
Yeah, I didn't think they needed to do the binary non-binary thing. I think it
Hmm.
would have been, the solving of Donna's issue. I mean, if she was going to remember everything, she'd die.
Hmm.
But her having, and I thought this was a very clean and beautiful fix. Her having Rose and this meta crisis inside them, and her split up in between her and Rose,
Hmm.
thus making it no longer deadly. That should have been enough right there,
Hmm.
to say, well, okay, well, that solves the problem, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the whole binary non-binary thing, and then they say, oh well, because Donna and the doctor, male female, uh, you know
Hmm.
the mere fact that Rose is her daughter should be enough to say she took half that meta crisis with.
Hmm.
You don't really need to go over the top, but if it just confuses people as opposed to pissing them off, that's fine. Less controversy that way.
So Rose had a companion in this one, a little guy named Fudge, and he actually was lifted from the comic strip. The two companions in the comic strip were a young woman named Sharon and her
Mm.
friend Fudge, and I think Fudge might have been a little older in the comic strip series. I'm curious if this young man's gonna return in any of the future episodes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I read the comic strip I think once back when it came out. So
Mhm.
I mean, aside from the fact that I know it's goes from nice to being reveal that it was evil, whatever. That's the only thing I vaguely remember of that. That and the fact that I love Dave Gibbons' artwork, but uh yeah, I don't know. I don't I get the feeling that we're gonna see obviously Donna in these last two specials.
Mhm.
But and then you shift over to Shurigawa, and he's going to have that Ruby Sunday as his companion. So I don't, I don't think we're going to see the Nobles anymore after these specials. Because I mean, it's I mean, Wilf, Bernard Cribbins, he's passed away.
Don't you think though that Donna and Rose now have kind of been awakened? I mean, they were both readily able to do things on that spacecraft, and do you think that's just do you think that that's gone? Was there?
Oh yeah, they let it go. I mean, that was another a step, a unnecessary step too far, that they say, oh, well, if you were a woman like us, you know how to just let it go. And it's kind of like,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
so, and they just
I
let
had
it go.
forgotten
So
that
they're
part.
back to normal. And,
Yeah.
which is fine. I don't think there's any benefit to bringing the Noble family back. I mean, Donna coming back like this is very unusual, and this was the victory lap, this was the bonus, and the
Okay.
mere fact that she's been fixed now. I mean, she's
Hmm.
been corrected, her mind has been saved. I think this is probably the last we're going to see of the Noble family.
Okay. So then at the end of the episode, in the TARDIS, the new TARDIS, or the new insides anyway,
Yeah.
Donna does a very Donna-ish thing and she dumps her coffee into the TARDIS and then they take off for a new adventure. So now they've kind of got carte blanche for wherever they want to go.
Yeah, well, I liked, that was great, because I mean, especially considering that she had just told them minutes earlier about how she destroyed a computer at work by
Yep.
dumping coffee at it. That was primo Tenant Tate stuff right there. And oh, that console room is beautiful. I mean, it is lovely. It is expansive.
Hmm.
It for the first time, you really get the idea, boy, that there is a world stuffed into this dimension with
Hmm.
all the entrances going out of the console room and everything, and
Yep.
very sleek. Yeah, that's very nice. I really like that.
Well, Rick, any closing thoughts on the episode?
It was just very refreshing to have Doctor Who back. And I was just hearing and seeing the new opening titles.
Hmm.
That was boy, I haven't tingled like that since Endgame. So I mean, that was nice. I look forward to next week and the week after. I mean, I don't know. I feel good. And then next week's episode, Wild Blue Yonder, is being touted by both Tennant and Russell as just a very different type of Doctor Who episode that's never been done before. And whenever that's in play, I always look forward to that, because we got such episodes as Midnight with Tennant back in the day, and and a different episode, I think, is fine. I get the feeling Don and the Doctor are going to have just a very good long talk about stuff in the center, and a good character moment, character builders, and all this stuff. So I look forward to it. I think it's starting well and it's going well.
Okay. So Rick and I will be back to talk about the Wild Blue Yonder after we've had a chance to see the episode. Rick, thank you very much for your time. Glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Jim. Always happy to talk Doctor Who.
Thanks again to Rick for joining us this evening, and thank you all for listening. Let's do this again soon. Take care.